Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. You're watching In Deep on the Delta, and this is the weekly report for December 9th. And if you watch that intro, you can probably figure that the fishing out here has been challenging. And I know the pressure has been light out here, and I want to start off this week by thanking all of you guys who tune in every week. I know all of you aren't out here fishing every week, but you're still tuning in and watching the report, and I appreciate that. It's important for me that guys are out there watching and listening to the report, even if you're not out here. And I also want to thank everyone that's been sending in reports, and it gets more and more important for you guys that are sending in the reports this time of year, because there's not as many people out here. I actually had a couple people apologize this week for sending in late reports, and I'd just like to say, hey, late reports are just as good as reports, up to the minute. And I'll say that because if I know what's going on last week compared to this week, that helps me formulate what the trend is out here. So I generally do my reports on Wednesday. They come out on Thursday. So if you send me a report Wednesday night or Thursday, after I've already downloaded the report, it still helps, because that next week it gives me a better indication on what the trend is. What if the baits are changing from slower moving baits to reaction baits, if there's a color that comes up or whatever. So I thank you guys for sending the reports, even if they're late. Keep them coming, and send them to scooper956 scooper9561032 at Gmail. I'll put that up on the screen. With that, let's get into the report, and I'm going to start off this week by talking about Clear Lake, because the fishing here on the Delta has been tough. I know access to Clear Lake is still tough, but Library Park, 5th Street, that ramp is open, and I have gotten some good reports from guys that are out there. We'll start off with the NorCal angler. A lot of you guys know Eli. He's fishing around the area meaning Central California. NorCal angler at Instagram if you want to check him out. And him and his partner were up at Clear Lake last week, did really well, had over a 20-pound limit, probably caught 100 pounds of catfish. They're throwing swim baits, and I think basically swim baits and underspins. They didn't say the fish were all over the lake. They found one little area that they were fishing, and they did really well. I also got good reports from some of the contributors that jerk baits were on. Now, with that being said, I talked to Jimmy at Clear Lake Bait and Tackle, and Jimmy's reporting that it's just fair, just fair fishing. And you have to take that into consideration, because I don't want to tell you guys to go up there and you might hit a day that they're not biting and say, well, what's Steve doing? All I will say is this is a good time to look at Clear Lake. The fish generally are on a little better bite during winter months at Clear Lake than they are here on the Delta. I will also be getting some reports on the mother lode, because any of the lakes like Berryessa and Maloney's that have spots in them generally do better in the winter. I didn't get any reports this week, but I'll make sure I call John Leasty and see what's going on up at the in the mother lode for next week. But anyhow, just be aware, especially guys that are kayak. I want to let you guys in on, there's 1 or 2 launch ramps open on Clear Lake. There really no tournaments are being held out there. Very light pressure. You have the opportunity right now to go up on one of the best fisheries in the United States and get out there while nobody else is out there. That just by itself is reason that if I was a kayak fisherman, I would definitely be looking up there. I guarantee you, and I'm hoping we get some rainfall. When that water comes up, we get the rain, the water comes up at Clear Lake, there's going to be a flood of people that are all thinking like I am. Nobody's really been fishing this area or the lake for 6 months or however long it's been, or it's been very light pressure. I'm going to get up there and I'm going to be the first one on there. Once that water comes up and the ramp's open, I guarantee you there's going to be a ton of people up there. So if you have a boat that you can get in on now, you're comfortable doing that, or a kayak, head up to Clear Lake and give it a try. Stop in at Clear Lake Bait and Tackle. Talk to Jimmy. He'll fill you in on what's going on out there. So that's the Clear Lake report. Let's get into the Delta report. I'm going to lop in everybody's report. You guys know that I talk to Outdoor Sportsman here in Stockton every week. I'm talking to Hook, Line, and Sinker every week. I'm talking to Rob over at the Bass Hole out at Bethel Island and Haps Bait. And I'm going to lump all of those guys together along with what I had. And I do have some information that I think may help you if you do decide to come out and you know, fish this next week or so. So first of all, striper bite. Oh, don't let me forget Jeff Suhu from Suhu Sport Fishing, because Jeff always gives me a report, and I talk to Jeff every week. Fishing for stripers, according to everyone, it's been a difficult week. Not a lot of pressure out here. The fish are spread out, and they're just tight-lipped. I know Jeff from Suhu Sport Fishing. His last trip, he just nailed them. Had a great trip. But he also said, you know, the trips before that are super tough. So he's coming out, and as much as he fishes the Delta, it's tough for Jeff to find fish and catch fish. Maybe not so hard to find the stripers, but to catch them, it's very tough. Haps Bait, they reported there was a downturn in stripers this week. And really the only guys that are catching fish that are out around Rio Vista that they're getting information on are the guys that are picking up live mudsuckers and just sitting out there and waiting for a fish to come along. And even with that, they're not huge fish this week. A lot of the fish are keeper sized to maybe 25 inches, you know, not real big fish. So with that, you know, the stripers are slow. The largemouth bass, man, everybody I talk to, and again, all you guys that I talk to at the ramp, I really appreciate you guys taking a minute or two and letting me know how you did. Talked to a lot of people at the ramp. I'm getting quite a few reports still, and everybody is just saying it's slow. I don't care if you're north, if you're south, if you're fishing Frank's Track, if you're fishing around, you know, Disappointment here around, where are we, Paradise Point. It's just been slow. So I wish I could fabricate a bite for you, but I really can't. So this is what I have been doing, and this is what I think everyone's going to have to do starting at this point in the winter. We've had lower water temperatures. The last week I've seen anywhere from 51 to 53 degrees starting off in the morning. So we have lower water temperatures. This last week I predicted that we would have better fishing because of the big tidal coefficients, and it really didn't happen. So, you know, great tides, water's still not super cold. A week ago, it's getting there, but a week ago we had, you know, 53, 55 degree temperatures, good tides, and the fish still didn't bite. One point in particular I'm going to point out, I'm getting a lot of my fish at dead low tide, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and I'm going to talk about what I think is the reason. But anyhow, even with the great tidal coefficients and a little warmer water, the fish just weren't biting. Now we're heading in for some lower tidal coefficients, not as big of tide, and also the water temperature is dipping down there very close to 50 degrees, and that's really, in my opinion, kind of a killer here on the Delta. Once that water hits 50, 51, 49, that's winter time, and they're going to slow down, and I don't care who you are or what you know out here, you just can't come out here. These big tank size Florida strain bass, they just don't get very active in the winter. They still feed, and you can still come out here and catch big fish. One of the things that I'm going to start doing is probably go either real small or real big. There are fish coming in on S-wavers and glide baits. Not a lot of them, but the fish tend to be bigger. There's also fish that are responding to A-rigs. And again, the A-rig and the S-waver are two baits, my two big baits that I will, and I call an A-rig a big bait. I might be throwing 3-inch Kitex, but it just seems like the A-rig is a big fish bait out here. Those are two baits that I will probably keep on during the summer, or excuse me, during the winter. They may not always be on top of my deck, but they're going to be somewhere close by, because both of those baits not only catch big fish, but they catch a lot of stripers. Here's what I'm going to be doing this week. I'm taking my rods out into the house, and I'm going to switch out all of my leaders. And you guys know that I generally use 45 or 55 pound tests on most of my rods out here. If I'm punching or frogging, I'm 65 pound. But I'm going to take that those braid line, and the leaders that I have on the end of the braid line, I'm going to cut those. Most of my leaders now are about 3 to 4 feet long, and they're anywhere from 14 to 20 pound test. I'm going to cut those off. I'm going to extend my leader out to about 15 pound test. I'm going to go with, out to about 15 feet. I'm going to drop the test down, and I'm going to use fluorocarbon. I'm probably going to go with my light lines or my light leaders. It's going to be 10 pound fluorocarbon, 15 feet. And with my heavier stuff, it'll probably be 14, maybe 16 pound test. But now some of the other things you might want to be doing, and I am also going to be doing, is I am going to start fishing a couple of spinning rods out here with smaller baits. I'm going to go to some Ned rigs, and I know last year the Ned rigs, when the water got cold and clear, the Ned rigs worked really well. I have been fairly consistent with fish, meaning I'm going out and catching 10 to 15 fish in a 4-hour period on slow-moving plastics. I'm not catching big fish. I've usually been able to eke out I'll just say, not even a 13 to 15 inch limit, but a 12 to 14 or 15 inch limit. And what I have found is, on my deck, I am using 4 worm rods, and it has really been a difference maker on how you rig those worms, whether it's a weightless wacky or a weightless worm that's tied on an inline worm hook that's super weedless, whether it's a T-rig or whether it's however, a Carolina rig, whatever you're using. But what I am finding, once I catch a fish or two on maybe a weightless wacky, it seems like that's the pattern for the day, and it's very subtle. You throw a weightless wacky, and you think, well, man, I just need to get down in the weeds a little deeper, so I'm going to take a Cinco, 5-inch Cinco, and I am using smaller worms. But you catch them on a weightless wacky, you think you're going to put on a 5-inch Cinco, no weight, inline worm, and let it drop down in there, and you just can't get bit. It could be the very reverse on the next day. You may be catching them on that weightless Cinco, and you're going to catch all your fish on that, and they just don't want to take a wacky worm. So keep that in mind. Again, just subtle differences. You may have 4 worm rods on the deck, and only one of those worms, one of those worm setups is going to be what they want that day. Coming down the pipe, we'll have some more bait reviews and some more wintertime technique type things. And man, I wish I could tell you they all work, but when I'm talking about techniques out here and patterns, you have to remember the patterns in the winter are much more subtle than the patterns in the summer. And a lot of times, if you're like me, when I'm out and I only get 5 or 6 bites during a day, I don't recognize a pattern until I'm in my car heading home, and then a light bulb may come on and say, you know what, I caught all those fish in 8 feet of water on plastics, for instance. And that's not a great pattern, but it is a pattern, and that's the only pattern that you're going to be able to find in the winter months when this water gets down to 50 degrees. So think about that. When you're evaluating your days of fishing out here, think that your patterns are going to be much more subtle, and anything you could take, whether it's a depth of water or maybe it's a color or a type of bait or a size of bait, take that and don't take it for granted. That could be a subtle difference that will make or break the day for you. So guys, thank you so much for watching and tuning in, and man, I hope the fishing gets better this week. It's getting cool out here. Make sure you bring a jacket. We're going to get some rain next week. Maybe that will change something up, probably bring in some fog, so be careful in the morning. Slow down if it's foggy, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching again.